Hey guys, today I'm reading Bad Princess. And I'm reading chapter 4, part 2. Okay. Right. Okay. The history behind the story, a fairy tale primer, part 3. The aristocratic world that gave birth to Les Princesses and their refined conte de fées shuddered to a close with the French Revolution. Soon the brothers Grimm filled the void with their first book, Children's and Household Tales, in 1812. These fairy tales were collected through oral tradition by the brothers who went around Germany asking everyone's grandma for a bedtime story. Despite the G-rated title, the tales were grim. In the Grimm version, Cinderella's stepsister's eyes were plucked out by doves, and Snow White's evil stepmother danced herself to death while wearing red-hot shoes. 13 years later, the brothers published an edited version slightly more suitable for children. Danish author Hans Christian Andersen followed suit in 1835 by publishing the first volumes of Eventyr, Danish for fantastic tales. Okay. Unlike the Brothers Grimm, who based their stories on oral tradition, Andersen drew his fairy tales from his imagination. They included The Little Mermaid and the Snow Queen, which inspired the Disney film Frozen. Andersen's stories catapulted into popularity once they were translated into other languages. So long before Elsa was imploring girls to let it go, Andersen's stories were inspiring princess fantasies around the world. The verdict was swift. The punishment harsh. The Princesse de Lambert was hacked to death by a mob. Afterward, her murderers mounted her severed head on a pole, which was paraded before the Queen's window in Paris, but only after they had the princess's pretty blonde hair curled and powdered by a barber. The reason? They wanted to make sure Marie Antoinette would recognize her friend. The trouble with sisters. You'd think the horrific fate of the Princesse de Lambert would be enough to put anyone off princesshood for good. Not so for Pauline Bonaparte, 1780 to 1825, who by the end of her life had gained the right to call herself a princess and a duchess. Not bad for a girl born into a regular old family. Pauline was the sister of Napoleon Bonaparte, the general who swept into power after the French Revolution. To avoid more bloodshed, things had to settle down, and fast. Napoleon stepped in after winning military victories on France's behalf. Once a new government was in place in 1799, Napoleon became first consul, or head of the government. Later, he let the Senate convince him to become emperor of the French Empire, a hereditary title that would be passed to his descendants. So much for democracy. But even before her brother was an emperor, Pauline was the it girl of her generation. By the time she turned 16, word of her over-the-top beauty had spread all the way to Paris from Marseille, where the Bonapartes were living at that time. Alexandre Dumas, author of The Three Musketeers, described Pauline as a charming creature, a petite and graceful being who wore little embroidered slippers such as Cinderella's fairy godmother might have given her. Okay. Hey, I thought you liked art. Napoleon became emperor. Who was going to tell her none? However, even when she was a girl, Pauline was already a piece of work. By the age of 15, she had gotten romantically involved with a 41-year-old dude with kids and a pregnant girlfriend. But he was only the first of Pauline's boyfriends. Damage control led her family to marry her off to Napoleon's second in command, Victor Emmanuel Leclerc, who was a more age-appropriate 25. A year after their wedding, her son Jermide was born. The difficult delivery permanently affected Pauline's health for the rest of her life. She insisted on being carried around when the pain was too much for her to walk, though this didn't stop her from betraying Leclerc with countless men. A close friend of Leclerc described Pauline as a singular mix of all that was most complete in physical perfection and most bizarre in moral qualities. It didn't matter much as the marriage was not to last. Napoleon sent the couple overseas to Saint Domingue, a Caribbean sugar colony where there'd be slave uprisings, illness, and other dangers. Leclerc hoped to make his fortune colonizing the island for France. Instead, he wound up dead from yellow fever. Pauline returned to France, accompanied by her young son and Leclerc's coffin. Ever the opportunist, Napoleon considered ways to use Pauline was also getting ways to use the widowed but still gorgeous Pauline to strengthen ties with Italy. Pauline was also getting tired of wearing black in the mourning for Leclerc. though it's reported she looked fabulous in it. As if on cue, the solution arrived in the form of an legal prince. Prince Camillo Borghese' illustrious ancestors included a pope. His family owned a villa in Rome, lands in Tuscany, a palazzo palace in Florence, and a famed collection of art and jewels. He was handsome and well dressed. He was also an uneducated fool. A contemporary described Camillo as having nothing to say, although a lively way of saying it. So that's what I'm going to end for today. Bye.